Here's Josh Hennig.
Friday edition of Game Night here on 97.3 ESPN. I am Josh Hennig, hanging out with you here in the Matt Black Kia Studios live on 97.3 ESPN. Yes, Matt Black Kia Studios. I want to get you approved today. Matt Black Kia in the Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township. Visit them online at mattblackkia.com. We got a lot to get to today. Obviously, the Sixers get a win last night. Shut down Luka and the Mavs in the second half. I mean, if you're not impressed by that, I don't know what impresses you anymore. Also, we'll get into a little bit latest with the NFL, as well as the NFL quarterback carousel is still going on. Just because Wentz got traded doesn't mean other teams aren't still talking about their quarterbacks. So we got a lot of different things to get to. And of course, you guys out there, 609-403-0973 is text board to get on the conversation. Also, we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. You can watch the show right here on 97.3 ESPN, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter at 973 ESPN. And listen, we're going to get to the Sixers stuff because the win last night was a clear sign of who this team is. But I'm not wearing this Sixers shirt just for the heck of it, okay? I'm wearing the Sixers shirt because I was genuinely impressed by what I saw from the Philadelphia 76ers last night. What I saw from the Philadelphia 76ers last night was a team that went out there and said, listen, we got a job to do, and we're just going to do it. They didn't think too much about it. They didn't overthink it. They just went out there and said, we know what we're going up against. We know we're going up against a team that's Luka Doncic and a bunch of above average NBA players. Now, for the first half, you could argue that the Sixers let them stay in a little too long. And at the end of the game, it was a little closer score than you would expect. But when the Sixers went on that run to get into halftime, that 15-3 run, and then when they started handling that third quarter, just handling business, when it seemed like the Mavs had no chance to get anything going. The Mavs only had 2 of their 5 starters in double digits last night. Remember months ago when Doc Rivers said, I want to have the number one defense in the NBA. I believe we have the talent, Doc said, to have one of the best defenses in the league. Part of the reason why he came here, he said himself, was he looked at Ben Simmons and he looked at Joel Embiid and he says, I want to coach those guys. And even though Tobias Harris missed the majority of the second half last night after bruising his knee, the Sixers still went out there and got the job done. Defensively, 6 blocks, 11 steals last night. They told the Mavericks no. They just straight out said no. And I know for some people out there, it's not aesthetically pleasing. It wasn't a sexy game. It wasn't a, oh, you know what? That team, they didn't score. No, stop. Listen, there's an old saying, defense wins championships, offense sells tickets. Name me a team that had a garbage defense that ever won anything. There isn't one. You can't name one because they don't exist. There's so many times when you look at the sports world historically, the worst team to ever win an NBA title, for example, was the year LeBron's Cavs won the title. They finished the year outside the top 10 in the majority of defensive categories. Now, they weren't the worst defense in the league, but they were 18th in defensive PER, if you want to go by the metrics. They still finished top 15 in things like steals and stuff like that. So they weren't a horrible defense, but for the majority of the season, because of injuries and a variety of other things, they just weren't a good defense. Outside of that team, you can't find a team that was garbage on defense and won a championship. And I know we don't always value defense when it comes to basketball the way we do football. In football, every Eagle fan wants to pound the table, tell blitz, send the blitz, hit them hard. I remember when I was a kid, I had a coach, quote that line from that movie all the time to us at practice. It was, you hit them hard. If they get up, you hit them again. You hit them again until they don't get up again. And it's just, there's like, as a kid, you're like, oh, sure. Yeah, that's what you got raised in Philadelphia. Philadelphia is all about playing defense and hitting hard when it comes to football. For basketball, we don't always value defense. People forget that part of the reason why the Iverson Sixers team got to the NBA Finals is because guys like Aaron McKee and George Lynch and Dikembe Mutombo and Tyrone Hill were out there playing some legit defense and taking the pressure off of Allen Iverson. Allen Iverson had an MVP year because Larry Brown's strategy was, I am going to build a team around Allen that totally complements him to a fault. And that's why they ended up losing the NBA Finals, because they had nobody else to score aside from Allen. And you were asking Aaron McKee to stop Kobe Bryant. Like, good luck with that. Remember them when they were throwing Matt Geiger and Dikembe Mutombo at Shaq, hoping they might slow him down like by a half an inch? So why do we get so enamored with Ben Simmons scoring and this person shooting threes and this and that? Listen, it's because in basketball, the highlights are usually dunks. They're usually Steph Curry threes. They're usually game winners. In football, the highlights are the hits. They're the big collisions or the big plays, right? We have to remember that defense still matters in basketball. And when it comes to the 76ers, what did they do last night? They went out there and they just told the Mavericks no in the second half. They literally went out there and said, we're not playing this game with you. Dwight Howard doesn't get enough credit for how well he has played in his important role this year. And last night, he himself had 3 blocks and 8 rebounds, going on with 14 points. When he was on the floor, the Sixers were plus 14 with Dwight Howard on the floor. With Ben Simmons, they were plus 15. This team, he's got some defensive players on it. And, again, until we start accepting the reality that Doc Rivers wants his team to be a defensive juggernaut and he doesn't care about how many points you score, that's part of the reality we're dealing with. This is who the Sixers are. They're going to win by playing defense. And that's why I'm okay with the idea of going out and acquiring Kyle Lowry. And I'm okay with the idea of going out and getting a PJ Tucker. I don't really feel the same way about Zach LaVine or about, remember over the summer, it was, well, actually, this is the case, it was the winter, fall, because, the NBA season. Anyway, it was Buddy Hield for 2 years, right? Oh, trade Al Horford for Buddy Hield, right? I'm finally looking at this team and I'm saying, I don't think they really need a ton more offense. They need some bench score. They need some depth. They need some, bodies. So, your backup is in Poirier and Bradley and hoping that Paul Reed can come out from the G League. Like, no, you need a little depth. So, but you need depth that's going to go out there and give you a little fight. PJ Tucker, Kyle Lowry, George Hill, guys who can play a little bit of defense, guys who go out there and got a little grit, got a little, not afraid to, push a guy around, not afraid to listen. And if you can get away without trading Mike Scott in the process, can you do that too? Because let's be realistic. If you're in a playoff series and you can have Mike Scott just screaming at dudes off the bench and try to get in fights and getting other guys and other teams, getting them technical fouls, I'm all for that. I mean, did you remember the Pistons game when he's injured, he's in street clothes, he's ready to fight? Like, that was great. You need that. You need a little bit of grit. You need a little bit of fight. I just think that if you're going to acquire somebody, I want it to be someone who can play a little defense. I'm not as concerned about having some crazy amount of offensive fight. You need some offense, but not a crazy amount of offensive firepower. Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, coming up on the show, we have national NBA writer Ben Golliver, Washington Post, covered the NBA for a very long time. He's got a new book coming out as well about his experience inside the NBA bubble. So He's a resource we tapped into last NBA season when he was in the bubble. We're getting in touch with him again tonight because now that we are almost at the halfway point of the season, the NBA All-Star game is about a week away. We know what Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid are in the All-Star game. We'll get into all about the All-Star game, the NBA, the Sixers, the Eastern Conference, because it was Ben who came on the air with me multiple times in 2020 and said, look, the Sixers are frauds. He said, the Sixers, they are not going to win a championship. And when they came back from the bubble, you could tell as soon as Ben Simmons got injured, they were nothing. And Ben called it as he saw it. And I'm curious to know what he thinks about the Sixers this time round, because part of his beef with the Sixers last year wasn't that, it wasn't specifically Brett Brown per se, like some of the Sixer fans is. It was, he just didn't think that Ben and Joel were mature enough. He didn't like the construction of the roster. Those are two very different things. So I'm curious to know what his perspective is. We'll get in touch with him just under 10 minutes from now. We'll get to your thoughts as well, watching on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Thanks, everybody, for watching the show here on 97.3 ESPN GameNight with yours truly, Josh Hennig. I like this comment here from Adam watching on Facebook, because Adam is watching on Facebook. He says, last night he was great, but he hasn't been great all year. I think he's been huge for this team as a vet, talking about Dwight Howard. We also got another comment over on Twitter talking about, Superman was awesome last night. And listen, I'm with both of you. I think you're both right. Dwight was amazing last night, but Adam is also right when he says he hasn't been great all year. Well, his production hasn't been great all year, but he has been great in another area, which is, Adam, he has been a veteran leader, okay? See, you don't need Dwight Howard to go out there and get you double-doubles. You need Dwight to go out there and be a presence when Joel Embiid isn't on the floor. Those are two different things. So when you think about it, I don't need Dwight to go out there and get 15 and 10 from him. I need him to go out there and be a defensive and rebounding presence. And if he scores for me, that's even better. He has been huge, because for those who don't know, Dwight is taking these guys after games and said, hey, we're going to go do more shooting. Hey, Ben. Hey, Tyrese Maxey. Hey, Seth. Hey, Shake Milton. Let's go up there and shoot a couple shots. Let's get a couple extra work in. Let's spend a little extra time working on the craft. That's huge. And that's where I'm with you, Adam, and I'm with you, Thea. You look at this team, they need a vet like that. Now, Adam follows up and says, I would rather two bench players than one starter. And I think you're right. But, beggars can't be choosers. I think it's one of those deals where it's like, if you can get Kyle Lowry and a couple other pieces to beef up the bench, you take care of two problems in one shot. You get a guy on Kyle Lowry who is, him being a starter automatically gives you a little bit more bench depth. But how much you got to give up for him? That's why I'm still convinced that the Sixers, I don't see them making a 1-for-1 deal. I don't see this being a Sixers Raptors straight up trade. I would assume it would be something along the lines of, like a third team involved, the Rockets or the Warriors or the OKC Thunder, where the Sixers walk out of there with two players, but they give up some players, they give up some draft picks to make the whole deal work for everybody involved. Because at some point, once you start giving up 4 or 5 players to get one guy and his name is Kyle Lowry, it's not worth it. Even if their names are Vincent Poirier and Tony Bradley, right? At some point, you're just giving up bodies, and giving up warm bodies is not a solution. So to me, the Sixers need to make the deal by getting somebody else involved. And that way you can get Kyle Lowry and maybe PJ Tucker, or Kyle Lowry and George Hill, or Kyle Lowry and, DeLon Wright from the Pistons, or, maybe, listen, the reason why I mentioned the Warriors is because they have some pieces they can move around with. Maybe, you need a stretch 4, right? So, maybe an Eric Pascal from the Warriors is somebody you could talk about. Or, we mentioned PJ Tucker. He could be a stretch 4. There's a lot of ways you can get the same results that you need. You don't have to just do it one way. And if you think about it, for the Sixers, if they can get creative, it's going to make the team better as well. So it's definitely been a fun watch. Listen, the Sixers are way more fun to watch this year than last year. I think it's a big deal as well. Josh Hennig here on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, this is Game Night. Don't forget my FanDuel Sportsbook pick of the night coming up in about 34 minutes from now here on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, don't forget promo code Hennig when you sign up with FanDuel Sportsbook to get the same game parlay insurance as well as a risk-free bet up to $1,000 for new users. If you're an existing user, you're already grandfathered in with the same game parlay insurance. So if you're a new user, you got to use the promo code Hennig. If you're an existing user at FanDuel Sportsbook, you're grandfathered in because they don't want anybody left out. They're like some of these sports books that only give out promotions for people who are signing up. No, they give out promotions for everyone. That's what makes FanDuel Sportsbook America's #1 leading sportsbook. Coming up next, we'll talk with Ben Golliver, Washington Post national NBA writer, covered the NBA for a long time, get into his perspective on the Sixers, the Eastern Conference, the NBA All-Star Game, and more right here on 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle City. Of course, 97.3 ESPN.com for all your home for all your Sixers, Eagles, Flyers, Eagles, and high school sports coverage here in South Jersey. And don't forget, we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, where you can watch the show at 97.3 ESPN on all social media platforms.
It's Philadelphia Flyers hockey tomorrow on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app with Tim Saunders and Steve Coates calling all the play-by-play action. The Flyers are in Buffalo to face the Sabres tomorrow. Coverage begins at 1 p.m. It's Philadelphia Flyers hockey on the radio home of the Flyers in South Jersey, 97.3 ESPN, and listen live on the free mobile app.
This month, let me offer you some presidential advice. Leave me, your dollar in your wallet when you get 0% APR financing from Matt Blatt Kia.
Matt Blatt Kia wants to get you out of that old car you hate. Come in today or visit us online and get the credit you deserve. 0% APR financing available for up to 60 months on new 2021 Kia Sportage, K5, and Forte models. Or take $4,000 off MSRP on new 2020 Kia Niros in stock. Plus, Matt Blatt Kia in Toms River and Egg Harbor Township wants your trade, even if you owe thousands more than it's worth. Don't forget, you can't make a mistake with our 4-day love it or leave it return policy.
It's gotta be a Matt Blatt Kia.
Offers for Tier 1 or 2 credit for Kia Motors Finance. Not all will qualify. 0% based on 1516 per 1,000 cars. 4,000 all 2020 euros with 2,500 Kia Motors factory rebate to dealer. 1,500 Matt Blatt Kia discount. Go to mattblattkianj.com for complete details. Expires 3/4/2021.
Matt Blatt Kia, 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township. And now on Route 37 in Toms River.
Dorothy Roofing. Call 1-877-97-KEVIN.
Hi, I'm Kevin Daly, the owner of Dorothy Gale Roofing. Do you have a leak? Do you need a new roof? Give us a call today for honest, wholehearted advice at 1-877-97-KEVIN.
Wizard quality comes with DorothyRoofing.com.
What's the most important factor for determining a coin's value?
Rarity.
And now, the COVID-19 pandemic has resulted in the creation of a modern rarity.
When the West Point Mint was shut down due to health concerns, 240,000 emergency production 2020 American Eagle silver dollars were minted in Philadelphia for 13 days only.
And that makes these coins with the P-Mint attribution the second rarest coin in the entire American Eagle bullion coin series.
Less than 1,500 of these extraordinary silver dollar coins remain. Hurry, call government.com at 1-800-863-7267.
To learn more about these emergency production American Eagle silver dollar coins, call 1-800-863-7267.
Call now and you'll receive a free American Coin Collector's Bonus Package, a $10 value free with every order. Call 1-800-863-7267 now to secure your Philadelphia Mint American Eagle silver dollar coins before they sell out. That's 1-800-863-7267.
Progressive Motorcycle presents Road Wisdom from the Motor.
Half man, half motorcycle.
In life, there is no stopping.
Don't stop.
But if you do, make sure no one is behind you.
All clear.
Progressive Motorcycle also presents basic policy starting at $79 a year. Progressive Motorcycle, for those who were born to ride. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Annual premium for basic liability policy is not available in all states.
DQ presents How to Find Meal Fulfillment. First, order the delicious new rotisserie-style chicken bites from DQ. Then feast your eyes on these unbreaded, tender, juicy, 100% white meat beauties. Next, take a bite of the bite. Realize that unbreaded chicken loaded with flavor is finally possible. And last, call your boss and ask for that promotion. You may have started last week, but hey, if chicken this good is possible, anything is possible. New rotisserie-style chicken bites are now at DQ. Happy tastes good.
Hi there, Jackson Hewitt Tax Service here. Want to save some money filing your taxes? File your taxes with Jackson Hewitt now and pay $50 less than you paid someone else last year. That's right, pay $50 less than last year. Have your taxes done by a skilled Jackson Hewitt tax pro and get the biggest refund possible, guaranteed. It's win-win-win. Get more, pay less, but act now. The offer won't last. Get your coupon code and offer details at jacksonhewitt.com. That's Jackson Hewitt.
Was 2020 full of dings, dents, and scratches? Using your tax refund at Mako can help. Refresh your ride with your refund at Mako to undo a little bit of last year. Head to Mako.com to get a free online estimate today. Better get Mako.
You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, we are live as well on Facebook, YouTube, where you can watch the show here on 97.3 ESPN. Joining us right now on the Boardwalk kind of hotline, national NBA writer for the Washington Post. You've heard him here on 97.3 ESPN before. He is Ben Golliver. Also, he's come out with a new book, Bubble Ball, Inside the NBA's Fight to Save a Season. It will be released May 4th. And frankly, that'll probably be my book of the year because for as obsessed I was with all the COVID protocols and with everybody's bubble seasons, Ben was there in the bubble, so he can give you lots of great details in that book, Bubble Ball, Inside the NBA's Fight to Save a Season, coming out May 4th. Ben, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing quite well. You know, we've reached the end of another week. Kind of big news that the Brooklyn Nets are going to be shutting down Kevin Durant here through the All-Star break, and they replace him with Jason Tatum in the starting lineup and Domantas Sabonis on the roster. And, the Nets just keep on winning without him. It's been kind of an incredible story. So I don't know. That's how I'm closing my week off. How about you?
Well, we're closing our week off still trying to figure out who exactly is who in the Eastern Conference, because without Durant on the Nets, it's basically Harden and if Kyrie shows up, right?
Well, for sure. But I don't want to write them off in any stretch. I mean, James Harden's been playing like an MVP level candidate. I think you guys are surrounded by them over there, whether it's Joel Embiid or James Harden. Both those guys deserve to be in the conversation. What's amazing to me, I mean, Harden generated so much ill will with the way he left Houston that I feel like he's not really getting his credit, getting his due for how well he's played since he's got to Brooklyn. This is the way that everybody wanted him to play. Make quicker decisions, be a little bit more of a passing-minded playmaker. Take your shots when they're there, but don't force it. Don't grind the offense down. Don't go too much pound when you get into isolation. It's been a real joy to watch him play. He's definitely found his renewed vigor there in Brooklyn, and he's been carrying them to a lot of wins without Kevin Durant. I mean, Kevin Durant has almost missed half the season between the injuries, between some of the nights off, and then those COVID protocols, with the contact tracing. So, I mean, to me, you look at their record, how hot they've been lately. I think he's got to be in that conversation right up there with LeBron and Damian Lillard and Joel Embiid in terms of the MVP.
Now, you mentioned about what's going on with the Sixers. Last year when you and I talked about the Sixers last year, you were very firm. You said, look, this team was not built properly. You didn't think that team was a legit Eastern Conference contender, and it really did play out that way even before Ben Simmons got injured. How do you feel about the Sixers this year? Because as you mentioned, Embiid, he is an MVP candidate, right? Ben Simmons, he's shooting almost 75% from the foul line this month. Tobias Harris having a good last month and a half. How do you feel about the Sixers this year versus last season?
Well, I think they made a lot of the smart adjustments, and it really started at the top, bringing in a guy like Daryl Morey, who's never going to put his team out there with two centers who don't fit and try to make that work for an entire season. I mean, that's never been Daryl Morey's approach. What he wants to do is make his superstar level guys, their lives easier. You mentioned the book Bubble Ball. I do get into last year's Sixers struggles quite a bit because I, had a kind of an up close, viewpoint of it. I mean, Brett Brown definitely feeling the pressure when he was in the bubble. Joel Embiid kind of looking around and kind of wondering where is the help. You have Horford in the starting lineup, out of the starting lineup. I mean, it was a really rich story in terms of how they got swept out and the adjustments they made afterwards. And I got to say, they made some really smart adjustments. Not only Daryl Morey, it was the right time for a coaching change and a new voice. I think that has really worked out quite well for them. You're seeing Doc Rivers coaching the all-star team for, the Eastern Conference Starters Group. I mean, that tells you everything you need to know about how well that's gone. And Embiid has responded to his struggles in the bubble brilliantly. Give him full credit. He looked very frustrated. He kind of was talking, when he left the bubble about, oh, they don't let me play with my shoulder. They don't let me play with my elbow. This isn't really a big man's game anymore. I can't go down low and dominate. And I think he was just frustrated in that moment. He come back this season in very good shape, very good condition, and ready to dominate on a night-to-night basis. You saw it with that 50-point explosion not too long ago against the Chicago Bulls, but you've really seen it night in and night out from him. So I love the response to adversity from Joel Embiid. I love the two-way play, and the lineup fits better. They got more shooting, not quite enough to my liking. I still think they should try to go out there and find even more shooting if they possibly can, but the fit's been great, and I thought both Embiid and Simmons were worthy all-stars this year. And, I couldn't quite fit Tobias Harris onto my team, but I understand why he's upset and feeling like a snub too.
Yeah, we'll get to the All-Star stuff a little bit later because I was listening to you on the SI Now podcast, you and Michael Payne. You guys had some interesting conversation with the All-Star game, but just to stick with Embiid for a second, in our area, it's been suggested by a lot of people that, now that Ben has a child, Joel has a son now, Joel's growing up. He's more mature now. And that maturity is really what's turned him from the guy who he was before into what really would be what we're seeing right now, which is more of what his potential is.
I think that's possible. You guys would probably know that better than I would. I would just say that guys get sick of losing sometimes, right? That was a painful loss in the bubble. I mean, to go into that series, Joel Embiid had every reason to feel like he was the best player on the court against the Boston Celtics, right? I mean, he is the biggest, most imposing center, him or Jokic in terms of who's the best player at that spot in terms of traditional centers. You expect to go into that matchup and being able to do whatever you wanted. And it just did not play out that way at all. He was exploited on the defensive end. They're shooting the three-pointers over the top. He's struggling to come out and defend the three-point line with that scheme. Offensively, everything came tough. I mean, he's going head-to-head against Daniel Tice, but he's not putting up these monster easy numbers. Boston's team defense did a really nice job of tiring him down, wearing him down, tiring him out, and forcing turnovers. And look, he's got an awful lot of talent. He's always had the talent going back to college, right? But I think sometimes guys just get a few years into the league and they say, you know what? I'm sick of coming up short. I don't want to be a guy who goes out in the second round every single year. I don't want to be a guy who gets swept in the first round. And he even said that explicitly in the bubble. I don't want a sweep on my resume. And, sure enough, he had that sweep on his resume. And so I think that's just a natural progression process as he gets, into his prime and realizing there aren't many teams that can cover him. I love his self-confidence. He's like, I'm unguardable. I don't know if that's true. I think that you could probably find some ways to slow him down a little bit. I'm not sure he's the best player in the sport right now, but I do like that he has that swagger, that confidence, and that's what's been driving their success so far this season. And look, a lot of times in the NBA, your entire organization goes as your franchise player goes. When Embiid gets into the moods or when Embiid is injured or when he's just not playing 100%, that infiltrates everything. Everybody, rubs off on everybody. And this year, I think the vibe has been good because his vibe has been good.
Ben Golliver joining us here on the Boardwalk on the Hotline here on GameNight on 97.3 ESPN at Ben Golliver on Twitter. National NBA writer for the Washington Post. Don't forget the new book coming out in May. It is. I'm looking forward to this. Bubble Ball. I'm looking forward to this because you're basically getting into it with my obsession over the summer. So I'm looking forward to this book a lot, Ben. You spoke about the Sixers with their way their roster is constructed just a little bit ago. There's a lot of talk in this area. Kyle Lowry, PJ Tucker, George Hill, Patty Mills. A lot of names are being thrown out there, but who of those names actually makes sense?
Well, it's nice to be a situation where you're feeling like a destination, right? I mean, you have to work up into that category. We see it every single year where guys are either, on the last year of their contracts or their possible trade chips, or they are, free agents just looking for a home. Maybe they get bought out and they're trying to jump on board with a championship contender. It's always nice to be in that mix. That's a real sign of respect, and not too many teams are. I mean, usually the Lakers and Clippers are in that mix. I think this year everybody's going to circle Brooklyn and say, look, they're going to be a team that's trying to load up in the trade and buyout market if they possibly can. And I think Philadelphia deserves to be in that conversation too. Absolutely. Now, in terms of those names, I mean, I think to me, the dream would be Kyle Lowry, because I do think you're going to want to have an experienced late game, offense initiating ball handler, a guy who's been through the Eastern Conference wars before and can defend at that point guard spot. Now, he's probably not as good this year as he was last year or the year before, but he's still like an upgrade at that position and fills a lot of holes, I think, for Philadelphia. Now, can they get that deal done? I mean, that's an open question. But to me, that would be kind of the dream scenario if you're the Philadelphia 76ers. Who do you have on your dream target list, or who are you eyeing for that team?
I know for me, I would love to see PJ Tucker, because I feel like this team, I was saying a little bit earlier in the show, that this team to me, Ben, I look at them and I say they're winning because of their defense in a lot of ways. And I need guys who are two-way guys. I need guys who are going to go into a playoff series. If you're playing the Bucks, if you're playing the Nets, if you're playing the Celtics, I need guys who are going to look those superstars in the eye and say, bring it.
I love that attitude. I think that PJ Tucker is going to be a very hot commodity, and for sure, Houston should be able to get something back for him. What's interesting is that, like, I could see Brooklyn wanting to make a run at him too. And so does this come down to, like, whose relationship is stronger, PJ Tucker and James Harden, or PJ Tucker and Daryl Morey? I mean, I could see that being a kind of an interesting bidding war. We saw those two teams, by the way, Brooklyn and Philly, kind of both interested in James Harden a few months ago as well. You do kind of wonder, in that particular situation, exactly where are the relationships with Daryl Morey and his former team, right? You have to ask that question, just because he exits in very unusual circumstances. He says he wants to take this family leave, and then, a week or two passes and boom, now all of a sudden he shows up in Philadelphia, right? And so you wonder, are they on good enough terms to get a deal done there? I think that's an open question too, but you're absolutely right. PJ Tucker is going to be one of those guys everybody has circled. Every contender is going to want a guy like that. And you know who really needs him, by the way, is that team Milwaukee that you're talking about matching up with. I mean, their bench to me, and outside of their top three, has been pretty rough this year in terms of two-way contributions. Their defense has come back to earth quite a bit. I'm not sure if they've got enough assets to go make a move for PJ Tucker, because they spent them all to get Drew Holiday. But that's another team that can use the type of player you're talking about, that gritty two-way presence.
Now, what do you think about the name Trevor Ariza out there? He's a guy who's basically the Andre Iguodala of this year. He hasn't played all year. He's just sitting around waiting for someone to find a way to get him out of OKC. Is he a viable option for a contender in the Eastern Conference like the Sixers?
I mean, I haven't seen a lot from him for the last couple of years, if I'm being honest. He's had an amazing career. If you go back through how many different teams he's played, and he was, the very early stages of his career, he was a Laker. Then he had the long run with Houston as well. I mean, he's been on all sorts of different organizations, collected a lot of jerseys over the years. I mean, to me, I think that's a backup to the backup option for any of these teams. And, you've seen Brooklyn kind of go that direction too, though, with some of the guys they've randomly been picking up. Like they had a little flirtation there with an Iman Shumpert or an Andre Robertson, and just trying to take a shot on guys. I think that ultimately, there's a lot of discussion about players like that, but when it really comes time for the playoffs, often those guys are not really making an impact, one way or the other. Now, in the case of Iguodala, Miami gave up a lot to get him. I mean, that was kind of like a bigger, constructed trade, and it worked out pretty well for them because they also got Jay Crowder as well. And you're looking at the Heat struggling a little bit this year. I mean, to me, Iguodala is definitely showing signs of age, and they missed Crowder as well. I think that was part of their slow start too. So those trades can turn a franchise quickly, but they don't always turn them for a lasting time period. You know what I mean? Yeah, and Crowder, you can see he doesn't always show up on the stat sheet, but he shows up in terms of the way that team plays down there in Phoenix. Him and Chris Paul have really re-energized that entire franchise and the perception of the league about them. And speaking of them, listen, Devin Booker, he gets this selection to the All-Star game. I love the All-Star game conversation because I feel like there's really not 100% a right or wrong answer. To me, for example, I would have put Tobias on the All-Star team instead of Ben, just because I thought Tobias had a better overall season. But someone else brought this up to me this week. That is, NBA coaches don't focus as much on player stats as much as the guy who are a trouble as matchups for them. So I understand why the coaches said, look, we worry about Ben when we play more than we worry about Tobias. So I get that. But I want to know from you, is there a way maybe moving forward after this year that they can make the All-Star game situation better? Because I feel like that we spend more time talking about who didn't make the All-Star game every year than actually who's actually on the team. I know everybody wants to run and yell that word snub, don't they? And I mean, put yourself in the player's position. It would kind of suck to be snubbed, wouldn't it? I mean, now everybody's talking about how you should have made it or comparing you to this guy or this other guy. And you get your heart set on it. You get your hopes raised up. Tobias is a good example of that. Chris Middleton this year, Mike Conley, all those guys seem pretty disappointed. And all those guys have cases. So, my heart does go out for some of those guys who wind up in that snub talk because that can't really be very fun. And some of these guys, by the way, have millions of dollars in contract incentives on the line for the All-Star picks. And so that just makes it, adds insult to injury there. The coaches' selections to me this year were very strange because I agree with what you said. Usually they're picking the guys who they're worried about matchup-wise, who they're scheming for, who they wouldn't want to face in a playoff series. But, I'm looking at a player like Chris Middleton for Milwaukee. I mean, this guy's done it rock solid for 3 or 4 years. I mean, these coaches usually are scared of a player like that. They usually reward a steady player below the radar. Giannis gets all the attention, but Chris Middleton's hitting all sorts of big shots in big playoff moments. That's usually how it happens. But this year they overlook him for guys like Vucevic and Randall and Levine, who are on worse teams, who don't really have long playoff track records, who haven't really done it before. And it almost kind of seemed to me like they did it for the gram, they're just trying to kind of get in on the hype train a little bit. And that's not usually what the coaches do. That's usually what the fan voters do. And sometimes the media voters do. So I was surprised by some of this year's picks, to be honest. And I really felt like Middleton was the biggest snub of all of them. And I was even surprised to see that he didn't get Kevin Durant's spot. Seems like a natural, guy to kind of plug in. And instead they go Domantas Sabonis. So I just feel for that guy almost more than anybody. And Tobias, like you mentioned, he's right in that same group.
Yeah, I didn't mind Sabonis getting it just because I felt like there could have been an argument made that he could have been a starter, but we know the starters are a popularity contest purely more than anything else.
Yep.
I was asking another guy who covers the NBA earlier this week. I'll ask you as well. Is it time to expand these rosters?
Well, look, I'll be honest, man. This has been a weird season. I don't think this has been the NBA's basketball at its best. With the empty arenas, nobody playing defense. I mean, I honestly felt about 7 or 8 guys in the Eastern Conference and about 10 guys in the Western Conference truly deserve to be all-stars. Now, there was another category of guys who were in the mix who you could kind of make cases for, but to me, this is not the year to make that argument, right? Like, we've had so many teams below 500 in the Eastern Conference, so many teams struggling to consistently win. So many guys in and out of the lineup because of the health protocols and bouts with the coronavirus and everything else. I feel like this is just not the year to make that argument. Now, that being said, in general, they expanded the active rosters to 13 in the NBA. So it would make sense to at least go to 13 for the All-Star rosters, right? And I would not really go past that in general. I think a lot of times, the fact that it's an exclusive club, that it takes a lot to break into it, that there's only a few first-time selections every year, I think that's actually good. And then functionally speaking, when you want to get all these guys actually into the game and get them some court time, it's already hard to get 12 guys court time because, you do have to play the starters a reasonable amount of minutes because the fans want to see those guys. So if you're trying to fit 15-guy rosters or 13-guy rosters into the All-Star game, now it's just really tough. And these guys are only getting a few minutes of playing time. So, I don't envy the coaches who have to juggle those rotations. And I think it's probably fine as it is for right now.
Ben, one more before I let you go. Ben Golliver joining us here on the Boardwalk Kind of Hotline here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Don't forget, he is at Ben Golliver on Twitter. Check out his latest in the Washington Post, NBA writer, also the SI Now Open Floor podcast. Always a fun listen with him and Michael Pena. Before I let you go, most people believe, look, it's, we know who the contenders are in the Eastern Conference, but who the heck is coming out of the West? I mean, the Jazz are the best team out there right now. There are people who still love Portland out there. The Lakers, whatever is going on with Anthony Davis, who knows? The Clippers are a huge question mark over their head. What do you make of the Western Conference right now?
Well, I think the Lakers are still going to be deserve to be considered the favorite when they're at full strength. I mean, they present a lot of matchup issues for the Utah Jazz. I mean, if I'm power ranking all the teams in the league right now, I think the Utah Jazz are number one, clear cut, right? I mean, nobody's playing as consistently well and together as the Utah Jazz. But when they get to the playoffs, they're going to have to figure out an answer for LeBron. And, Royce O'Neal, that's not an answer for LeBron. And, I know Rudy Gobert does a great job captaining that defense, but ultimately you're going to have a guy who really matches up well with LeBron. And you're also going to have to find some front court versatility to match up with Anthony Davis. And both those guys really drove a lot of the Lakers' success in the playoffs last year. I would expect that to happen again. So, to me, I think that you got to, pay them the respects. But, there's a nice A-list tier here that also includes the Clippers, who are below the radar playing very good basketball. Kawhi Leonard's been kind of a fringe MVP candidate as well. And, they're getting some nice contributions from new pieces like a Nicholas Batum here and there to kind of, spark their rotation. But the Jazz, to me, are the story of the league right now. Unbelievable record, great offense, balanced scoring, going 8 or 9, 10 guys deep in their rotation. Everybody can shoot besides the centers, and the centers really stick to what they do well around the basket. And defensively, these guys are on a string constantly. They cover for each other, and they really work hard. To me, Quinn Snyder is easily the coach of the year. Jordan Clarkson's the 6th man of the year. Rudy Gobert is probably going to be the defensive player of the year, and they're probably going to wind up having the best record in the entire league when all is said and done at the end of the regular season. We'll see how much pressure mounts around them, right? Because when you have those kinds of big regular season talk, now it's sort of like Milwaukee from the last couple of years where everybody expects big things in the postseason. This group has played great together this year, but they haven't had a deep postseason run together, and that could get the pressure to mount on them, once they get a little bit closer to, June and July when we're having the playoffs this year. So to me, they're the team to watch. It's fun to watch them night in and night out basis, just how well they execute. But it's also going to be a fascinating story. Can they do it when all the lights are on, when they're going up against those big market teams with the superstar level guys? Can they be that small market underdog that flips the story? I can't wait to see it.
He is Ben Golliver. The new book coming out in May is Bubble Ball: Inside the NBA's Fight to Save a Season. Check out his work over at the Washington Post, the SI Now Open Floor Podcast, at Ben Golliver on Twitter. And as all guests, he appeared here on Game Night on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Ben, great to talk to you again. Hope to have you back again soon.
Oh, it's my pleasure, man. Take care and be safe.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Okay, for the FanDuel Sportsbook Picks of the Night on the NBA coming up in just about under 10 minutes from now. But first, we will get to your thoughts and comments next here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN, 609-403-0973. And all of you watching on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter at 973 ESPN. Also, remember, you can listen to every show on 97.3 ESPN on the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Is free thanks to First Bank of Sea Isle City.
It's Sixers basketball tomorrow on 97.3 ESPN with the voice of the 76ers, Tom McGinnis, calling all the exciting play-by-play action.
Euro steps by him and scores it up and good. What a move. Are you kidding me?
The Sixers host the Cleveland Cavaliers tomorrow. Coverage begins at 7 p.m. Philadelphia 76ers basketball on your radio home of the Sixers in South Jersey, 97.3 ESPN.
On some models excludes Corvette. With GMF financing. Excludes prior sales. See dealer for details.
It's President's Day all month long at Bennett Chevrolet with our biggest, boldest, best deals ever. Saving you up to 25% off MSRP on brand new vehicles. Right now, Bennett Chevy is selling brand new vehicles at GM supplier employee pricing. Plus, you keep all the rebates that can save you as much as 25% off MSRP. But there's even more ways to save with 0% financing available. Plus, if you're looking for pre-owned, Bennett will pay you a minimum $7,000 for your trade towards any pre-owned in stock. That's a minimum $7,000 for your trade, no matter its condition. Imagine how much more you'll get for a good trade. And once you've dealt with our non-commissioned sales team, you'll rave about the wonderful experience with no need to negotiate and no hassles, because our team is paid on your satisfaction, not how much you spend. It's President's Day all this month at Bennett. Find new roads at Bennett Chevy, Egg Harbor Township, and BennettChevy.com.
Hey guys, are you afraid of taking off your shirt in public? Don't be embarrassed. Just say, I love Lyle back instead with male breast reduction. Many men develop a fullness in their chest as boys that persists and even worsens as they get older. This condition is called gynecomastia, and with simple liposuction, most cases can be effectively treated. Call 856-MAKEOVER today to schedule your private consultation with Dr. Lyle and Back. That's 856-MAKEOVER, or visit ILoveLyleBack.com.
To celebrate State Farm's surprisingly great race, we gave this game day jam surprisingly great lyrics.
I want a race that's great. Who is this to free him tonight? Hey, it's Jake. I want a way to save. Got the coverage on my brand new ride. State Farm race. Yeah, they're great. State Farm, State Farm, State Farm race.
Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
What makes AutoZone America's #1 battery destination? Because they offer free battery testing and charging and reliable replacement batteries. And they've always got your battery solution. Get in the zone. AutoZone.
KFC's Colonel Sanders here. We all love sitting down to a home-cooked meal with family, but there's rarely enough hours in the day to do the cooking. So let me do the cooking for you. Well, not me personally, that's just a turn of phrase. Your KFC will do the actual cooking. The point is, let someone else do the home cooking for you. Come to KFC and pick up a $20 fill-up. That's 8 pieces of chicken or 12 tenders and all the fixings to feed your family. Order ahead at KFC.com. Limited time only. Prices and participation may vary. $20 fill-up not available with delivery. Tax and substitutions extra. Delivery service and additional fees may apply.
We know you're spending a lot of time at home, and maybe that home could use a little TLC. Since going to a home show isn't really a thing right now, 97.3 ESPN FM is bringing the home show to you. Local exhibitors have been setting up in a virtual show featuring the latest products and services for your home. Go to 973ESPN.com to find great articles on home improvement tips and trends. Thanks to our friends at Broadleys Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. Broadleys.net, your trusted source for 3 generations.
This month, let me offer you some presidential advice. Leave me, your dollar in your wallet when you get 0% APR financing from Matt Blatt Kia.
Matt Blatt Kia wants to get you out of that old car you hate. Come in today or visit us online and get the credit you deserve. 0% APR financing available for up to 60 months on new 2021 Kia Sportage, K5, and Forte models. Or take $4,000 off MSRP on new 2020 Kia Niros in stock. Plus, Matt Blatt Kia in Toms River and Egg Harbor Township wants your trade, even if you owe thousands more than it's worth. Don't forget, you can't make a mistake with our 4-day love it or leave it return policy.
It's gotta be a Matt Blatt Kia.
Offers with Tier 1 and 2 credit for Kia Motors Finance. Not all will qualify. 0% based on 1516 per 1,000 power. 4,000 all 2020 euros with 2,500 Kia Motors factory rebate to dealer. 1,500 Matt Blatt Kia discount. Go to mattblattkianj.com for complete details. Expires 3/4/2021.
Matt Blatt Kia, 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township. And now on Route 37 in Toms River.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. 97.3 ESPN mobile app for all your coverage. The Philly, Sixer, Eagles, Flyers, high school sports in South Jersey, and more. It's free thanks to First Bank and CLC. Also live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. You can watch the show at 97.3 ESPN. Of course, Game Night being brought to my friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook. I love betting on basketball with FanDuel Sportsbook. I'm always finding new player props, game props, odds, boosts, great ways for you to get on the action with FanDuel Sportsbook. Don't forget the same game parlays. You can only find them on FanDuel Sportsbook. Here's the deal. You can combine player point totals, game over-unders, first half point spreads, and more, all on FanDuel Sportsbook. The same game parlay insurance you can get right now. New and existing users, $25 back every day if your parlay falls one leg short with same game parlay insurance. You heard that right. It's another reason why you should bet with FanDuel Sportsbook. Here's the deal. If you're a new user, just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app or go to go to sportsbook.fanduel.com. Sign up with my promo code Hennig. You get same game parlay insurance. That's Hennig when you sign up with FanDuel Sportsbook. Must be 21 or to play. Full terms and conditions at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Last night we went 2-1 on the picks. The Kings and Knicks, as I said on Twitter at Josh Hennig last night. Listen, that was ugly. I knew the Kings had a bad defense, but that was disgusting. I mean, come on. What are you doing? What are you doing, people? You know who the Knicks' leading scorer was last night? That's how bad the Kings were last night. Their leading scorer was Emmanuel Quickley. I guarantee you don't know who Emmanuel Quickley is. If you do, you're a diehard basketball fan. Emmanuel Quickley led them. Yeah, so we got that right. Sixers covered the spread as well. Joel Embiid fell pretty short of the over 46.5 points, rebounds, and assists. So we did not hit that last time. But 2-1 is still a good winning record for the evening. And, of course, we will get to the picks in just a moment. But first, you guys' thoughts at 609-403-0973 is the text board. Also, you all watching on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Let's go over the text board first. We have Tom in the Villas chimes in. It says, I've played, coached, and refed basketball. So many people are blinded by 3-point percentages and points per game to see how good Ben Simmons really is. That's Tom from the Villas. You know, Tom, it's a good point because when you think about sports, we forget that you don't win by just scoring points. Yes, the goal is to outscore the other team. That is a general principle when it comes to playing sports. You want to get more runs in baseball. You want to get more touchdowns in football. You want to get more points in basketball. You want to get more goals in hockey. I get it. But that's not the only part of playing the game. And you're right. People are so obsessed with 3-point shooting. They're so obsessed with scoring averages. You know who scored a lot of points in their career? Gilbert Arenas, okay? Agent Zero was a phenomenal guard in the league, but he never won anything. You know why? Because he wasn't a great team player. He was a guy who didn't get along with certain people. He insisted on being the final shot, even if it wasn't the right shot. Listen, you want a guy that wants to have the ball in their hand and go out there and be successful. But he was to the point where it was like, dude, like, do you need to take that shot? Was that shot really necessary? It was bad at times when you watched Agent Zero and that team. But you know what? It's just part of the game, right? So people get obsessed with the point score. They get obsessed with 3-point shooting now because of Steph and Clay and that Warriors team that completely changed how the NBA game is played. And you're right. You know, it's like when we have the conversation about Howie Roseman. Ben Simmons is not the worst player in the league. You're not trading him for a bag of basketballs. Ben Simmons is an elite defensive player. He is a very good guy as a floor general. He's great in the open floor. And when he wants to score, he can score. You saw it in that game when he scored 42 points. If Ben Simmons wants to score, he'll find a way to score. And now that he's shooting from the foul line, that's the biggest thing to me. It's not the shooting for the outside, not the 3-point. You know, it's the foul shooting. It's the fact that Ben has finally turned around and said, you know what? If I make these free throws, we might go places. If I'm hitting these free throws, guess what? I'm not just going to put my team in a better position to win because I'm putting points on the board, but it's forcing the coach to keep me on the floor because he's not worried that I'm going to get fouled and miss foul shots. It's a huge, huge part of the game. It gets overlooked, and you're right. People are so obsessed with certain stats, they forget the big picture. It's a great text from Tom in the Villas. Josh Hennig here on GameNight on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, my FanDuel Sportsbook picks of the night. We'll get to them now. Of course, you guys can still comment for the end of the show. 609-403-0973 is the text board to get in on the conversation. Of course, we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. You can watch the show here on 97.3 ESPN. All right. Sportsbook picks of the night. First of all, I'm going to start with the primetime NBA game on ESPN television tonight. Portland versus the Lakers. Now, here's the deal. The Lakers and Portland are both allowing almost the exact number of points per game on defense. Lakers, 113.1. Also, Portland, 113.8. Both teams are allowing teams to shoot at a pretty high clip as well. Almost 50% for both teams. Remember, Dennis Schroeder, he's out. Anthony Davis, he's out. So why on earth are the Blazers a +5 underdog? Lillard is playing tonight. Give me the Blazers +5. Also, because of the poor defense of both teams, I'm going to go the over 222. If you think about it, 113 plus 113 is 226. A little bit of math for you here on GameNight on 97.3 ESPN. Also, I'm going back on the Kings hate train. The Sacramento Kings, after last night's embarrassing loss to the Knicks, they're playing again tonight. They were in New York. Now they got to travel to Detroit. This team has lost 9 straight games. Detroit is at home. They're mostly healthy. Give me Detroit in the +2 tonight at home. They expect to have DeLon Wright back for the game tonight. That's a big part of their team. And you know what? I think the Pistons can beat the Kings tonight. The Kings, their defense is so bad. They're allowing 125 points per game on the year. The worst in the NBA. So, Pistons at home, Blazers, I don't think they're going to lose a big game tonight versus Lakers. It'll be close. It'll be competitive. I'm Josh Hennig. This is Game Night. I'll catch you tomorrow for Sports Bash Saturday at noon after Billy Schwein.
Hey, South Jersey, it's Billy Schwein. It's an exciting weekend in the locker room. We will review all the hot topics from the week. On Saturday, we'll talk with 6-time Stanley Cup champion and a Hockey Hall of Fame legend, Mark Messier, about his career and what he's doing now. On Sunday, we'll be talking baseball. Sunday's guest is former Phillies relief pitcher, Scott Air. A Sixers recap and a Flyers preview. All the action starts every Saturday and Sunday from 10 a.m. to noon on 97.3 ESPN and the mobile app.
Health Update with Robin